Driver. The driver is the longest club in the bag and the one most associated with raw distance. It has the largest club head and the longest shaft, designed specifically to launch the ball as far as possible off the tee. Most drivers today are made from titanium or carbon composite materials, which allow manufacturers to create a large club face while keeping the weight manageable. The oversized head gives players a bigger sweet spot, which makes distance more forgiving even on slightly off-center hits. Professional golfers regularly hit drivers over 300 yards, but the design benefits casual players just as much. Getting the ball far down the fairway on the first shot sets up everything that follows. Fairway wood. Once the ball is in play, fairway woods take over for long shots from the ground. They are shorter than a driver but still built for distance, typically used when a player needs to cover a lot of ground without using a tee. The club head is smaller than a driver but still rounded and relatively large compared to other clubs. The name comes from an era when these clubs were actually made from wood, persimmon being the most common material. Modern versions use steel or composite materials, but the name remained. The 3-wood is the most commonly carried fairway wood, offering a balance between distance and control that few other clubs can match. Hybrid. The hybrid emerged as a practical solution to a problem many golfers had with long irons. Long irons are notoriously difficult to hit well. They require a precise, consistent swing to generate enough lift and distance. Hybrids combine the shape of a fairway wood with the length and loft angle of a long iron, creating a club that is significantly easier to hit cleanly. The wider sole and lower center of gravity help get the ball airborne more naturally. They became popular in the early 2000s and quickly worked their way into both amateur and professional bags. Many players now carry 2 or 3 hybrids in place of their 3, 4, and 5 irons. Irons are the workhorses of a golf bag. They cover the middle distances, typically between 125 and 200 yards depending on the player, and are used for approach shots aimed at getting the ball close to the hole. A standard set includes irons numbered from 3 through 9, with lower numbers producing more distance and higher numbers producing more loft and stopping power. The club head is flat and relatively small compared to woods or hybrids, which gives irons a more precise feel but also less forgiveness on mishits. Cavity back irons, where weight is distributed around the perimeter of the club head, have made modern irons considerably more forgiving than the blade irons used in earlier decades. Wedge. Wedges are specialized irons designed for short, precise shots around and into the green. They have the highest loft angles of any club in the bag, which means the ball travels a shorter distance but rises steeply and stops quickly after landing. There are 4 main types: the pitching wedge, gap wedge, sand wedge, and lob wedge, each covering a slightly different distance range and shot type. The sand wedge was specifically designed by Gene Sarazen in 1931 to help players escape from bunkers, using a wide, bouncy sole that glides through sand rather than digging into it. Wedge play is widely considered one of the most important skills in golf, as it directly determines how often a player gets the ball close enough to the hole to score well. Pitching wedge. The pitching wedge sits at the lower end of the wedge family. It carries a loft of around 44 to 48 degrees and is typically used for full approach shots from around 100 to 135 yards, depending on the player. Most golfers carry it as a natural extension of their iron set. It often comes included when purchasing a standard iron set. The pitching wedge is one of the most frequently used clubs on the course, reliable for clean contact from fairway lies and useful for chip shots around the green. Its loft is low enough to allow a controlled, penetrating ball flight rather than the steep, high arc of the more specialized wedges. Sand wedge. The sand wedge is one of the most recognizable clubs in the game, built specifically to handle bunker shots. Its defining feature is a wide sole with significant bounce, the angle between the leading edge and the lowest point of the sole, which prevents the club from digging too deep into sand. When played correctly, the club skims beneath the ball rather than striking it directly, using a cushion of displaced sand to lift the ball out and onto the green. The typical loft sits between 54 and 58 degrees. Beyond bunkers, sand wedges are also effective from thick rough and for short pitch shots where height and soft landing are more important than distance. Lob wedge. The lob wedge sits at the extreme end of the loft spectrum, typically carrying between 58 and 64 degrees. It produces a very high, steep ball flight that lands softly with minimal roll. This makes it the preferred club when a player needs to carry the ball over an obstacle a bunker, a slope, or a tight pin placement, and stop it quickly after landing. The lob wedge requires more precise technique than other wedges. A slightly misjudged swing can result in a thin or heavy shot more easily than with lower lofted clubs. Phil Mickelson became one of the most recognized users of the high lob wedge, building much of his short game reputation on spectacular high, soft shots from difficult positions. Putter. The putter is the most used club in any round of golf. It is designed exclusively for rolling the ball along the ground and into the hole, used almost entirely on the putting green. Unlike other clubs, putters come in an enormous variety of shapes, lengths, and head designs, reflecting how personal and variable putting technique is from one player to the next. Blade putters are thin and traditional, favored by players who prefer direct feedback. Mallet putters have larger, heavier heads that provide more stability and forgiveness on off-center strokes. The length of the shaft varies too. Belly putters and long putters were once common on tour before anchoring the club to the body was banned by the rules of golf in 2016. Putting accounts for roughly 40% of all strokes in a typical round, which explains why golfers invest so much time and thought into finding the right one. Chipper. The chipper occupies an unusual space in the golf bag. It looks like a putter but is lofted similarly to a 7 or 8 iron, designed to produce a low-rolling chip shot from just off the green. It is aimed at players who struggle with the technique required for a traditional chip shot using a short iron or wedge. The simple pendulum-style putting stroke makes it easier to make consistent contact. Chippers are not commonly seen in professional bags, where players develop precise short game skills using conventional wedges. Among recreational golfers, however, the chipper has a loyal following for its practicality and the consistency it can bring to an otherwise frustrating part of the game.